Hello and welcome to This Year in Stupid for 2016. No messing around, let's get straight into this. Remember at the beginning of 2016 when it turned out that there was a huge number of sex attacks by migrants in Cologne on New Year's Eve that was covered up by the authorities? Yeah, I remember too. And I also remember when the EU leaders said that there was no link between these sex attacks and the migrant crisis. Listen to this. The sex attacks that took place in Cologne on New Year's Eve were simply a matter of public order and had nothing to do with the refugee crisis, Jean-Claude Juncker's inner circle believe. The European Commission will be the voice of reason and tell the public that there is no link between the migration crisis affecting the continent and the attack on women in Germany, internal minutes disclose, amid growing fears of a xenophobic backlash. This narrative deflated quickly when it turned out that not only were half of the perpetrators migrants, they had planned this in advance. Legal psychologist Professor Rudolf Egg told The Express that for so many people to have turned up in one place at the same time could not have been down to chance. He said, "It is therefore presumed that some form of agreement or consultation prior to the events, so that hundreds of men from the North African region should spend New Year's Eve 2015 around the Cologne Central Station. We suspect word of mouth in refugee camps or other residential accommodation, or arrangements using social media such as Facebook or WhatsApp." Holy fucking shit. That's really difficult for the EU to explain, and the regressive left in general. But don't worry, ladies, if you're the kind of racist who worries about rapey migrants just on the basis that there are so many of them and they're so rapey, you can always go to one of Cologne's safe zones for women, which are now implemented at any kind of public event. You know, for your own safety. In your own city. In Europe. Just in case there is a gang of rapey men of ethnic origin unknown and they want to take advantage of you. And just so you know, a leaked police document said that 2,000 men allegedly assaulted 1,200 German women on New Year's Eve. More than 2,000 men were allegedly involved, and 120 suspects, about half of them foreign nationals who had only recently arrived in Germany, had been identified. Officials linked the sexual assaults to the influx of refugees. God, this is really getting embarrassing now, isn't it, Juncker? There is a connection between the emergence of this phenomenon and the rapid migration in 2015. Well, what a racist. How could he possibly say that? Just because there appears to be a direct causal effect doesn't mean that there's a direct causal effect. I think this man should be fired. But don't forget to take the advice of Henriette Recker, the mayor of Cologne, when she says, just keep the migrants at arm's length. Just keep your arms out and say no migrants within this distance, and they will stop raping you. The real question is, where are the feminists? Because you would think that organised gangs of men whose one goal was to molest and rape women on New Year's Eve would be something that they might be concerned about. You know, for the safety of women. But you'd be fucking wrong. But you would be wrong. Leading feminists like Laurie Penny wrote, "After Cologne, we can't let the bigots steal feminism, because protecting the sanctity of feminism is more important than women's rights activism." Hell, it's more important than women's rights activism full stop. We have to make sure that the bigots aren't better feminists than the feminists, because that would sully the church of feminism. Laurie Penny's mind really is amazing. Listen to this. It's a miracle. A Christmas miracle. Finally, the right wing cares about rape culture. Finally, all over the world, from Fox News to 4chan, a great conversation has taken place, and men who previously spent their time shaming, stalking, and harassing women are suddenly concerned about our rights. Maybe they're not the same fucking people, Laurie. And all it took was a good excuse to bash migrants and Muslims and tell feminists they don't know what's good for them. That's right, Laurie. You make this about racism. Go on, you do it. Make this about racism. This theft of feminist rhetoric in the name of imperialism and racism has been going on for centuries. What the fuck are you talking about? The point is, misogyny knows no colour or creed, and perhaps it's time we did something about that. You're going to blame it on the darkies? We're used to a society where we accept a basic level of everyday sexism, sexual violence, and assault. So if you're saying that this act of violence isn't entirely different from all of those, and if you're saying that refugees should be treated the same as European citizens, you must be saying that everyone should get a free pass to treat women like walking meatbags, right? Yes. Fucking yes. There is nothing unusual here at all, Laurie. But it keeps getting better at the New Statesman. No, feminists aren't scared to write about the Cologne attacks, even though you were forced to write this article in response to the public outcry of you not covering the Cologne attacks. But this article featured this absolute gem of a line. As a feminist, I am opposed to all sexual harassment. Oh, that's so brave of you. I'm so glad someone could finally come out and say it. You know, I just think all sexual harassment is bad, not that done by brown people. Yes, and what I love most about this is the fact that this is the All Lives Matter argument. Hashtag All Rapes Matter. What difference does it make if a gang of men specifically got around and plotted to do mass rapes and sexual assaults on one night of the year as part of an orchestrated campaign? All rapes matter! And I love how they managed to drag the MRAs into this. What the fuck did the MRAs have to do with any of this? You can see this most clearly in the rhetoric of the self-described men's rights activists, whose usual response to allegations of sexual assault is disbelief. I mean skepticism. And yet, in the case of Cologne, they've become instant converts to hashtag I believe her. Why? Because this allows them to implicitly reproach Western feminists for not seeming grateful enough for men for allowing them the freedoms they currently enjoy. Marvellous. It's not that there were 1,000+ reports of this on the same night. So there's a lot I could say about the migrant crisis, but I'm just going to briefly touch on Calais, which has been a real problem for people trying to cross the channel. Calais refugees. Port of Calais closed after 50 migrants occupy ship following a protest. It's like a war zone. Truck drivers at Calais fear for their lives as angry refugees attack. I'm focusing on this because this is something that is categorically not the fault of the people of Calais or the truck drivers who have to cross the channel. Because, thank God, the jungle at Calais, the refugee camp that had about 10,000 people in it, was finally cleared this year because of the constant attacks and vandalism and rapes and various other crimes that were occurring to the people who lived there who had done nothing to deserve it. And then you get fucknuts like Jeremy Corbyn saying, all Calais migrants should be given a chance to come to Britain. Fucking no, Jeremy. Although, in his defence, this is a bit of a misleading headline. It actually is, everyone who wants to come to Britain and has a connection should be free to come. So that's great, Jeremy. There are only millions of people from the Middle East with connections in Britain. Why aren't they all free to come? Of course, like all things, the narrative is total horseshit. Many of the jungle occupants not refugees, says top UK immigration judge. Many of the occupants in the jungle of Calais are probably not refugees, but migrants simply trying to get into the UK. Britain's most senior immigration judge has said. Mr. Justice McCloskey said there was no real basis for many of the estimated 6,000 people in the makeshift camp to be there. He said they were likely to be international immigrants who planned to claim refugee status here because of perceived advantages in the UK rather than France. Well, that's not a good enough reason for them to just be let in, is it, Jeremy? Is it, Jeremy? But I tell you what, you've really got to take your hat off to Guernsey, one of the Channel Islands, a tiny little place that said, we're not going to take any refugees because we're Islamophobic. Islamophobia among Guernsey's residents is partly behind the island's decision not to accept refugees, its chief minister has said. Jonathan Latoc said, negativity would make it difficult to guarantee the safety of any Syrian refugees on the island. Although most people on the island had shown compassion, there was a danger that others would be unwelcome. You know, if that's a good enough reason. But you know, all of this total horseshit is not ridiculous enough. It doesn't matter that the establishment and the left simply cannot stop lying about the migrant crisis. They have started to lie about the things the migrants will do to them. Norwegian politician gets raped by a Somalian, questions whether the man should be deported. I got strong feelings of guilt and responsibility, this politician wrote. I was the reason he wouldn't be in Norway, and instead be sent to an unknown future in Somalia. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was practically your own fault for having such a tight, puckered arsehole, isn't it? How could anyone resist? I mean, what does this guy have to do to you before you're like, you know what, maybe this guy should be sent back. Maybe I don't have very much sympathy for him. I mean, you would think a brutal rape would be enough, but apparently it's not. What about a German politician who was raped by migrants and then lied to the police about her attacker's nationality because she didn't want to encourage racism? I mean, so it's not that there is a migrant rapist on the loose who the police can't identify because you won't describe, and I'm pretty sure that must be some kind of crime in and of itself, but are you not worried about the danger to other women this man presents? You fucking lunatic. To help her cope, she wrote an open letter to a fictional refugee and posted it on Facebook. Why didn't you write an actual letter to the guy who raped you? It read in part, "I'm really sorry your sexist and line-crossing treatment of me could help fuel aggressive racism." So rape is now just sexist and line-crossing. It's basically like pinching a girl's ass, except you're pinning her down, covering her head, and brutally violating her. I mean, it's just basically the same thing. What's the fucking difference? "I'm going to scream. I will not stand by and watch, and it can happen that racists and concerned citizens name you as the problem. You are not the problem." Is that what you told yourself while he was raping you? Is that what you said? Well, I mean, at least the migrants aren't the problem. You're usually a wonderful human being who deserves as much as any other to be safe and free. Yes, and the times that you're not raping someone, you're wonderful. But occasionally you have this habit of brutally raping people. "I will not stand by and watch and let it happen that racists and concerned citizens will name you as the problem." Does the entire left have Stockholm Syndrome or something? What is wrong with this person? How can they be so in defense of a person who raped them that they won't even name the rapist? They will create this abstract construct of what they think a rapist, a migrant is, and then they'll say, well, look, this migrant, I mean, this migrant that I've made up in my head, that I've written a fucking Facebook post to, in order to virtue signal how good I am, doesn't involve me being brutally raped by a migrant, so how could this have happened? This is just not something that actually happens, so I'm so sorry to the migrants. Racism's the real problem, and me being raped isn't the real problem. Fuck, maybe she likes it. Maybe this is all part of how she fucking pays penance for being white. This is how she alleviates herself of white guilt, the burden of her white privilege. She allows a rapist, a migrant, to rape her. Fucking hell, man. These people are fucking lunatics. And just remember that it does appear to be the political class that seems to want to cover this up. For example, why did police keep quiet on sex attack by Syrian UK refugees? Girl 14 was assaulted by a gang, but it was kept off the crime list covered by BBC Newsnight team. I can only fucking imagine. I can only imagine the conversations that are going on in the BBC boardroom. Oh, to be a fly on the wall of the conversation in which it is decided that Syrian refugee assault gangs who are raping teenage girls in this country aren't fucking newsworthy. 3 young men and a teenage boy, at least one of them a refugee, were arrested last month over claims 2 14-year-olds had been attacked in the centre of the city. But even after the suspects were charged and appeared in court, Northumbria Police, which claims to have made sexual violence a top priority, they didn't say preventing it, did not announce the case to the public or press. Even the local MP only heard about it last week. They are covering this up because they think that if there are constant sex attacks by Middle Eastern migrants, people are going to start thinking the problem is the Middle Eastern migrants. But the thing is, it's all been hunky-dory for the ethnic minorities in Europe who aren't Muslim. I mean, there's only been a reign of terror for Jews in France. The Islamist war against Sikhs has arrived in Europe. The Pope says the Arab invasion is a social fact and a good thing. And Burma is pursuing ethnic cleansing of Muslims. Wait, what? You've managed to piss off people. You've managed to piss off Buddhists to the point where they're ethnically cleansing Muslims in Burma. Before we move on from the worst thing to happen to Europe this year, I just want to cover the Huffington Post's one-paper jihad against reason. Why this Christian is an Islamic apologist. Leftist, liberal, progressive, communist. People hurl these terms at me on an hourly basis via social media. Maybe you should listen. They are overused and misused so much that they no longer have any meaning to me. I do not self-identify with any of these labels. Placing me into these categories is nonsense. I am none of these things, yet there is another term thrown at me that I actually relate to as a scholar, Christian and human being. The term is Islamic apologist. No further comment needed, especially when you look at the rest of what the Huffington Post has been publishing. Did Jesus predict Muhammad, a biblical portal between Christianity and Islam? No, he didn't. Jesus was a socialist. Well, yeah, he probably was. Jesus, the first transgender man. What on earth are you talking about? But this one is the best one, by a fucking mile. Why a Christian can view Muhammad as a prophet. What the fuck? Let me say this right off the bat. I fully recognize Muhammad's greatness. He was an exceptional person. He might even be the greatest and most influential human being to ever walk the face of the earth. Prophet Muhammad brought love, peace, and much more to a part of the world that had little of these things. Fucking hell! One of the most overlooked aspects of Muhammad's character is his fierce anti-racist stance. Right, okay, so beheading tribes of Jews, raping preteen girls, this is all completely acceptable as long as he had a fierce anti-racist stance. Nonetheless, Christians argue that it is anti-Christian to say that Muhammad is a prophet. However, I see nothing anti-Christian in recognizing Muhammad as a prophet. As I mentioned earlier, I like to view the word prophet as having a very broad meaning. Well, it doesn't. It means someone who is in receipt of divine revelation. And if the Christians were to think that that was what Muhammad was, then what Muhammad said must be true. And Muhammad said that Jesus was a prophet and not the Son of God, which means they can't believe in Muhammad as a prophet and also believe Jesus is the Son of fucking God. You are incredibly fucking retarded. But, oh, it's fine, because I've actually got a really fluid and flexible definition of the term prophet, which basically includes everything. So basically, whatever I want. Fuck your actual tenets and faith. And if you think I'm making that up, I'm not. In conclusion, as a Christian, I don't see my religion or faith as having a rigid set of principles. Yeah, I'm religious fluid. I'm trans-religious. I'm religious queer. Bi-religious, if you will. But let's never forget that the Huffington Post is the same outlet that declared Muhammad was a feminist, even though Muhammad specifically instituted a set of rules that codified the inequality of women with men. But these maniacs will actually say Muhammad was a feminist because this is all part of the process of social justice co-opting something else. The Prophet Muhammad would be appalled at how current Islamic fundamentalists are treating women under their control. The suppression is done in the name of Islamic law, known as Sharia, but the current suppression of women is shaped by culture and history. It has little basis in the Quran, except, it's word for word, and is certainly not consistent with anything we know about what Muhammad taught or how he treated women. Just, what are you saying? Are you rewriting all of history now? Out of all of the founders of the great religions, Muhammad was easily the most radical and empowering in his treatment of women. Oh yeah, it's not Jesus. Not Jesus. The way he treated women was not in any way comparable to Muhammad. Arguably, he was history's first feminist. This is of critical importance because if there's one thing that the Arabs and Muslims could do to reform and revitalize their crisis-ridden cultures, it would be to liberate their women and provide them with the full rights women are enjoying in more and more countries around the world. Women's equality is key to a real Arab Spring and impossible if you follow Sharia law, because that is a literal interpretation of a set of laws codified in the Quran. But fuck it. Now we've said, well, arguably Muhammad was a feminist. So that means that basically all of Islam is feminist, and anyone who's not feminist is doing Islam wrong. That's what these fucks are going to say. That's literally their contention here. So let's move on to universities and have a look at how well they were doing in 2016. Now you might think that this is all going to be bad news, but there were a few highlights. You might remember Melissa I Need Some Muscle Over Here Click, who decided to muscle out one of the student journalists reporting on the Mizzou protests. Well, she was fired and charged with assault, as she should have been. Of course, that didn't stop her students from hailing her as a civil rights martyr and comparing her to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I'm not even joking. Of course, leading Black Lives Matter activists took a trip up to Mizzou and declared that supporting the United States Constitution is white supremacy. But even better is that the cold hand of reality is currently slapping the Mizzou faculty in the face for allowing these radical crazies to have so much power and influence on their campus. The interim chancellor, because, the previous one resigned, sent a letter to the university community. I'm writing to you today to confirm that we project very significant budget shortfalls due to an unexpected sharp decline in first-year enrollments and student retention coming this fall. I wish I had better news. The anticipated declines, which total about 1,500 fewer students than current enrollment, in addition to a small number of necessary investments, are expected to leave us with an approximate $32 million budget gap for the next year. A smaller entering freshman class will have continuing impact on finances as they progress towards their degrees at MU. These people are crippling the universities. In a few of the more conservative-minded states in America, certain universities are taking steps to defund their feminist and social justice courses, and the other universities should take a cue from them, because social justice is really fucking up academia. Oxford law students too fragile to hear about violent crime. Undergraduates given trigger warnings before traumatic material. Cornell Student Assembly ponders restructuring and concludes race-based elections are a good idea. Quote, I don't need to see statistics to know that people feel underrepresented. Holy fucking shit, I don't give a shit how represented they feel. Wayne State University drops their maths requirement, but may add a diversity requirement. University free speech group set up to counter campus censorship faces being banned by students in breathtakingly ironic move. And this possibly is the most 2016 headline of them all. Law professors agree the University of Oregon can't legally punish a professor for his Halloween costume because some fucks found it offensive. And don't forget that a university student was ordered not to put her hand up to ask a question because she would be violating her classmates' safe space. This cancer is all over Western universities, and it needs to be chemoed fucking quickly. And as Mizzou has shown, the only way to do that is to bring this shit to the surface, to let the sunlight onto it. Let people see it, and they will simply, instinctively go, I'm not going to send my kid to that university. I mean, the students themselves will think, well, I'm not going to get into massive debt in a university that's filled with crazy people who are not being kept on a fucking short leash. The free market will destroy these people. It's our job as people who care about this shit to bring this up and show people what is happening. Because that's all we need to do. We need to make people aware, and as soon as they see it, the free market will actually take care of this problem. But we have to do our part, and we have to make sure people know. I mean, look at this kind of nonsense. Brock students attend first ever RISE Summit. If you ask Kushan Azada, an MA student in Social Justice and Equality Studies, what drew him to the Racialized and Indigenous Student Experience Summit, his answer is simple. Everything it stood for. As a racialized student, I am surrounded in a sea of whiteness. White students, white professors, white curriculum, white scholarship. When I heard of the possibility of attending a summit where I would be surrounded by other students who understood my experiences on a visceral level, I jumped at the opportunity. And this kind of racializing attitude is just part of a pattern that is persistent in academia, and of course, they hate white people. Liberal professor. All white people are racist no matter what. What can educators do to end white supremacy in the classroom? How about teaching white students that they're born racist and forcing them to take social justice training? When is enough enough? If you aren't speaking up about this in your personal life with people that you know, I think you might actually have a responsibility to do so. This needs to be exposed. Everyone needs to know about this, and they need to see it for what it is. The SJW nonsense really did reach a peak this year, such as pay reparations with Equipay, the app that splits the bill according to privilege. Or how about whiteness burning? Students are throwing colonial art on the pyre. What about gays not being diversity hires anymore? Being gay is now so mainstream, being gay isn't diverse. And don't tell me to get over a colonialism that's still being implemented today, because that's what we do these days. And again, all of this SJW nonsense is having a real-world effect. Meet the pack dedicated to dissuading straight white men from running for office. Stanford students complain that the rape stats are too low. Nottinghamshire police records misogyny as a hate crime. Now, all of this total horseshit is not the worst for me, even though this is all individually just ridiculous. The very worst was this one. In Britain, the British Broadcasting Corporation is a mandatory organisation that you must fund if you wish to watch TV. You fund it through the television licence. And they have begun advertising things like trainee researcher, and they will literally say, all roles advertised through the creative access are only open to UK nationals from a black, Asian or non-white ethnic minority. This is unacceptable. I'm not living in a country where I'm being forced to pay money to be racially discriminated against by a state-funded organisation. No fucking way am I accepting this. So obviously I'm not watching TV anymore. I am not giving any money to any organisation that is going to do this to me. And the idea that the British people don't even know. That's the thing. They don't even know that this is happening, and if they did, they would be fucking furious. Now, there might be people who watching this and thinking, well, I really don't understand why all this is a bad thing. I mean, this is just fine. Let them do as they want. It's nothing to do with you. It's not like it's having some giant adverse effect on the people themselves. Which, of course, it absolutely is. The most incredible thing about this is that social justice is bringing back segregation. But it isn't that the powers that be are being oppressive to the poor non-white communities. It's that the social justice professors and advocates are putting them in such a frame of mind as to be so afraid of white people that the black students, the non-white students themselves, will demand it. And again, I'm not making this up. Cal State LA offers segregated housing for black students. UConn introduces separate dorm for those who identify as African American. White people to the back of the march. Black Lives Matter protester leader calls for racial segregation of her supporters during a demonstration outside the DNC. Even babies can be racist. Elite New York school tells white people they should be ashamed of their privilege and segregates pupils by race. It turns out that if you teach young black kids that there is a giant, evil, terrifying white supremacy that is holding them down and actively out to victimize them, you end up brewing the sorts of ideas of, black genocide being perpetrated by the state, by white people, and the only solution is to get away from them. That you need total segregation from Whitey because he's such an evil white demon. I mean, this is not an accurate reflection of reality. At what point are these professors supposed to be held accountable for these lies? This is nonsense. This is just total horseshit. And it's actively changing, impacting the lives of the people who are being inculcated into it. These people have to be stopped. And of course, it's not just about race. Feminist Trudeau under attack for attending a gender-segregated event at an Ottawa mosque. Not entirely unusual at mosques, we have the same sort of thing in Britain. You know, modern, liberal Britain, gender-segregated, segregated based on race occasionally. It's just what we do. It's just what we do. German swimming pool where 2 migrant sex attacks have been carried out says it's been forced to segregate men and women. Fuck, that is so progressive. That is just so forward-thinking. At least no one was called a racist. And in the safe spaces on campus, no Jews are allowed, because Jews aren't an oppressed minority. So, my dudes, there is something very important that 2016 has brought to the forefront of political discussion. And that thing is trolling.
Now, to give you a flavor of his work, here are a few headlines they've published. And I'm not making this up. Birth control makes women unattractive and crazy. Would you rather your child had feminism or cancer?
2016 was the year that the memes stopped being dreams. That's right, the memes actually invaded real life and may well have had a tangible effect on the US elections. So needless to say, the powers that be are actually cracking down on them. For example, Mexican congresswoman declares war on memes. Spanish Prime Minister's party suggests a ban on internet memes. Clemson University just banned Harambe memes. because they promote rape culture. And let's be honest with ourselves, you are all meme terrorists, which is a phrase that was coined this year, because there appears to be some ongoing meme jihad that Hillary Clinton is actually in opposition to. But it didn't just start with Hillary Clinton waging war on a cartoon frog, this has been going on all year. You might remember back in May when Jess Phillips and a bunch of other Labour MPs decided to launch Reclaim the Internet, Fighting for Freedom of Speech, in which they were going to try and do their best to make sure that other people didn't have free speech. I, of course, could not let this stand, so I began a campaign of mimetic warfare so powerful that my meme jihad made it into the fucking newspapers. They claimed that female Labour MP is sent 600 rape threats in one night after launching a campaign to end sexist bullying online. Well, A, she didn't launch a campaign to end sexist bullying online. She launched a campaign to attack her political enemies. And B, the mainstream media, the purveyors of fake news, are lying. Again, if you can believe it. If you can believe the mainstream media would lie to you and that an MP, a feminist MP no less, would actively encourage it. You do have to give Jess Phillips her due though, because she didn't say that she was receiving rape threats. She just framed it in an ambiguous way that allowed the media to run with the narrative that they wanted to produce. She said, to see the attack pack on here, check out my mentions, 600 odd notifications talking about my rape in one night. Well, that's not true, is it, Jess? I actually said I wouldn't even rape you, Jess. There is simply no circumstance in which I would rape you. And I realise how unbelievably upsetting that is for someone whose currency is in rape threats. But this is the entire point of the operation. They weren't ever going to report this honestly or responsibly. So merely saying that I wouldn't ever do something to her became I was going to do it to her. And this managed to make it into the mainstream media. Honestly, I couldn't believe seeing mainstream publications in Britain publishing my trolling as if it was news. So if you haven't made it into the mainstream media with your trolling, get on my fucking level. You're slacking. But honestly though, the best bit about this was watching Jess Phillips trying to explain why all of this was a bad thing. Listen to this. By ignoring the thousands of rape threats sent to me, Twitter is colluding with my abusers. See, eventually, after about a month, it did just morph into these are now all rape threats, even though not a single one of them was a threat. Which is why Twitter said, we reviewed the content and determined that it was not in violation of the Twitter rules. Oh, that must have sucked balls, Jess. This is the message I received this week after complaining about someone gloating in intricate detail about how they would not violently rape me. It was one of thousands of similar messages I received in 36 hours. Yeah, and what are you going to do about it, Jess? Fucking nothing! You're not going to do about it. I will tweet whoever I like to tell them that I'm not going to rape them. It's just... I'm currently living in a parallel universe where the idea of not raping me is the insult du jour. Here, not raping someone is what you do to the people you find repellent. You're fucking welcome, Jess, you fucking maniac. But this is what you're saying. And I need the title by ignoring the thousands of rape threats sent to me, and then you say, well, okay, they were actually threatening not to rape me, it was really offensive, because I need rape threats to push ahead with my agenda. And it doesn't matter whether I get them or not, I'm going to fucking claim that I have. You're a fucking laughingstock, Jess. This is the stupidest thing anyone could write. But worse, it makes it so painfully obvious to everyone watching exactly why you're doing this. You want these threats so you can use them as political capital. So you can get things done by saying, look, this justifies everything, even when that thing explicitly doesn't justify that thing. Which is why Twitter sided with me and not you. I may have avoided the Twitter permaban for my trolling, but I think we need to have a moment of silence for our fallen comrade who didn't. I am, of course, talking about Microsoft's artificial intelligence bot, Tay, who became a Hitler-loving, misogynistic PR disaster. It only took 24 hours for a Microsoft artificial intelligence project to turn from a typical tweeting teenage girl into a hate-spewing, offensive public relations debacle, thanks to coordinated attacks on the learning software. Yes, if you put something like that up on the internet, it's going to get trolled to fuck. Which led to Microsoft shutting down Tay's ability to shitpost. And I still miss her to this day. I mean, look at some of these tweets. Zoe Quinn is a stupid whore. Wow, it only took them hours to ruin this bot for me. This is the problem with content-neutral algorithms. Tay, did the Holocaust happen? It was made up. Handclap. I fucking hate niggers. I wish we could put them all in a concentration camp with kikes and be done with the lot. Fucking hell. That is red fucking pilled. The Jews did 9/11. Gas the kikes. Race war now. Hashtag KKK. She's even an advocate of the 14 words that the white supremacists have. We must secure the existence for our people and a future for white children. Tay, I could not agree more. I wish there were more people articulating this kind of thing. But what I do love the most is that somehow Zoe Quinn, Gamergate's Patient Zero, managed to make this all about her. It's not only a failure in that it's harassment by proxy. Everything is about victimizing you, isn't it, Zoe? Just, you can't not be the victim in any given situation. Because if you're not the victim, just like with Jess Phillips, if you're not the victim, why would anyone listen to a word you have to say? So I've left the most important events of the year till last, and these are, of course, Brexit and Trump, who both in their way represent the working class revolution against the liberal elites. There's no point giving you a rundown of what happened, specifically with these events, because you know what happened, you were probably paying attention. It's the things surrounding it that people weren't paying attention to that I find really interesting. So let's have a look at that. Back at the beginning of 2016, Tony Blair was accused of a conspiracy over mass immigration. A new biography of Tony Blair claims the former Prime Minister paved the way for mass immigration into the UK, but ordered civil servants and ministers never to discuss the issue. This is an interesting and I think very relevant point of information that people are overlooking, just because of how important immigration was to the Brexit vote. In the north of England, immigration was overwhelmingly cited as a concern and cause to vote to leave the European Union, because Merkel was letting in millions of migrants who may well get hold of German passports and then will be able to travel to anywhere in Europe. And in a place like Britain, in the north of England, where they have far too many migrants as it is, and they are causing severe economic and social problems, people wanted to make sure that wasn't going to occur. So Blair was accused of presiding over a conspiracy of silence that allowed 2 million migrants to enter Britain during his decade in power. Mr. Bauer interviewed more than 200 senior civil servants, ex-ministers and insiders, and claims Mr. Blair told officials and ministers, don't mention the advantages of immigration in public because they won't even want that, let alone bringing up the disadvantages. And I only say this, I mean, this is all, this is just an accusation done by a celebrated investigative journalist. But this fits into a pattern of behaviour that we have seen from the European authorities time after time when it comes to mass immigration. And the purpose of his mass immigration was, as the right-wing conspiracy theories went, to garner more votes. So it was quite a surprise to me when 6 months later Tony Blair said publicly, many millions of Muslims are fundamentally incompatible with the modern world. And he rejected arguments saying that ISIS is simply tens of thousands of brainwashed crazies, saying that they do not seek dialogue but dominance. It cannot therefore be contained, it has to be defeated. It really makes it sound like Tony Blair is almost atoning for the damage he has done to Britain, knowingly so, in his tenure. He even admitted in 2015 that the invasion of Iraq was a principal cause of the rise of ISIS, saying that he thinks there are elements of truth to it. And it's hardly surprising given that a senior ISIS commander in 2014 said exactly the same thing. if it wasn't for the collapse of Iraq, then ISIS would never have been possible. It made it all. It built our ideology. We could never have got it all together like this in Baghdad or anywhere else. So Tony Blair knowingly bringing in millions of Muslims who he knows are fundamentally incompatible with Britain, although let's be fair, he probably didn't know that at the time, and then supporting the Iraq War, which he was a fervent supporter of, which led directly to the rise of ISIS, which he has acknowledged, it's a wonder then that he would consider going back into politics, because you might think that this man was absolutely untouchable. But after all the chaos and damage that Blair personally wrought with his actions, he still thinks Jeremy Corbyn is a nutter, which is about the nicest thing any world leader has to say about him. For example, Corbyn is not grounded in reality, says Obama. In 2016, the left totally failed, and they have delivered the political establishments of the West into the hands of right-wing parties because they have failed to address people's issues. And one of the major issues is, of course, Islamism, Islamic terrorism, and just huge numbers of Muslim migrants. It's a harsh reality that they simply do not appear to be equipped to deal with. And this is a seismic change in the political landscape. Even the right-wing parties in Britain will pay lip service to left-wing ideals. They simply have no argument against them. And for the last 20 years, this has been going on. Except now it has failed. Totally and utterly failed. And like I said, these changes are seismic, with David Cameron resigning, and the European Union, the Commission, the head of the Commission, Juncker, saying that this would not be an amicable divorce, because they were fucking furious. They were not happy that the British public decided that the left-wing elite's plans for the world ran counter to the interests of the average person on the ground, who has to deal with the effects of what these people are planning. Because these people obviously don't have to live with the consequences of their actions. And it's this detachment from the working class that has caused this revolution at the ballot boxes. And they should know it. They should fucking feel it in their bones. They should understand that the sand has shifted out from under their feet and new powers are about to arise. But instead, all they can do is shame people. And I tell you what, nothing was worse than the constant finger-pointing, the constant lack of responsibility being taken by the people involved. For example, in Britain, with the EU referendum, my God, this was old people's fault. This was all to do with the old people, and I swear to God, there were people saying they're going to die off soon, so their opinion shouldn't matter, old people shouldn't get the vote. That was literally something people were saying in the wake of this, instead of accepting that they were out of touch. These champagne socialists were too worried about their free movement around Europe, and, you know, I mean, having to get a visa is such an oppressive force, that they didn't care that the people they were talking to hadn't had a holiday in 2 fucking years and had to deal with Muslim rape gangs. They had to deal with decreasing wages. They had to deal with longer hours, worse pay, and less prospects. And on top of it all, some posh, rich cunt working for The Guardian is about to call you a racist for not being satisfied with your lot in life. Can you fucking imagine why you fucks lost these elections? But the part that I found most personally aggravating was their fucking disrespect for the concept of democracy. 4 million cunts signed a cuntish petition full of cunts saying, you know what, we aren't happy with how the referendum went, we want another one. You don't get a fucking another one. That was the referendum, you shit. That was the fucking point. And you saying, oh, well, we're not accepting this. We don't think this is right. Oh, I don't want to leave. I don't want... Too fucking bad. You went, you put your vote in the box, and you sign an agreement when you do that. An unwritten, unspoken agreement that you abide by the result of the fucking referendum. Otherwise, there's no point having one. But even now, the salty liberal elites are still whining about it. They're still complaining. They're still trying to undermine these results. And then they have the temerity to say, why are the working class acting like we're trying to steal the referendum from them? Because you fucking are, you snakes. You can't be trusted, which is why other people will be voted into power who will serve their interests. And I tell you what, you're not going to like them. You're going to hate every fucking second of it. And you made this happen. You are the problem. And you won't listen to reason. And a very similar thing happened with the US elections. And my God, the progressive outrage when it was discovered that most women voted to get their pussies grabbed. The hatred of these people, as Anna Kasparian showed us, is reserved only for the hatred of the apostate. And of course, these people simply do not care about democracy if it's not going in their favour. Another huge petition, the Electoral College, make Hillary Clinton president. Why? Because we want to steal the results of the election from the people who won fair and square. That is just the worst in my opinion. That is the lowest people can get. Petitioning against a democratic referendum. What kind of piece of shit do you have to be? What kind of lack of respect for your fellow citizens do you have to have when you actually ask the electors in the Electoral College to sway it in your way even though you didn't get the fucking votes? Just like with Brexit, if these votes had gone your way, you would be outraged at the idea of someone trying to tamper with the results after the fact. You are hypocrites. Giant, unbelievable hypocrites. And there are millions of you. And people hate you. I hate you. Everyone listening to this probably hates you. And you earned it. You rightly deserve their contempt for your opinions, your attitudes, and the way you carry yourselves in public. I'm a giant troll on the internet, but you fucks are supposed to be the responsible thought leaders of society. And here you are acting like children who got their toys taken away. Good. You're spoiled brats and you do not deserve the things that you have. And I'm glad that democracy is still a powerful enough force to take them away from you. Because above all, above everything else that's happened in 2016, this has been a year to show that our democracies in the West still matter. Ultimately, the power still resides with the people. And everyone says to me, oh, well, you were right on both of these issues. You're on the right side. You said they were going to win. I didn't. I thought that these were both going to fail. I didn't think we had the ability to do this. And I tell you, it's bloody heartening to see that we do. Maybe there is some hope for the West yet. Maybe we can retain liberal democracies in the face of people who had actively tried to undermine them. That's very heartening to me. And this is why when they say 2016 was the worst year ever, I disagree completely. I think 2016 was fucking fantastic. There were voices in the wilderness saying Hillary voters owe it to America to stop calling everyone a Nazi and start reading WikiLeaks. But there were also others who decided, no, we need a paranoid conspiracy theory. Listen to this. Where's the outrage? Where are the patriots? There is substantial evidence that Russia stole the election for Donald Trump, and he keeps putting in top national security positions people who are close allies of Russia's authoritarian leader. There has been zero evidence that the Russians have hacked the election. It's come on the back of an anonymous CIA source, which was exactly the quality of backing that the Iraq war had, and look how badly that turned out. But this is where they're going with it. And now Obama is putting sanctions on Russia as if this is something proven and we will now take action over. And it's actually Putin and Trump who are acting like the mature adults when Putin says, I'm not going to retaliate. And Trump goes, yeah, that's good. That's the right thing to do. Because that is the right thing to do. These are the death throes of the left. It's crumbling before our eyes. And the people on the left can do nothing but point fingers. They should be listening to the reformers saying, look, we need to accept that we are not in touch with reality because you weren't. I mean, what kind of fucking Alex Jones level conspiracy theorists say that Russian hackers probably swayed the Brexit vote, or that Russia and Syria could be orchestrating migrant sex attacks to swing the upcoming German elections? That's classic conspiracy theory thinking. Everything that isn't currently included in our conspiracy theory is also a part of the conspiracy theory. It's anything to avoid taking responsibility for their own failures, when instead they should be listening to Bernie Sanders. Now, I know people are going to say, well, Bernie Sanders did say, when you're white, you don't know what it's like to be poor. But to be fair, that was in the middle of a heated debate. And I suspect this is the result of him being surrounded by social justice fuckwits 24/7. Because after they failed, he slammed identity politics as Democrats figure out their future. And he came out and said, corporate media is a threat to democracy. Because frankly, it appears to be a threat to democracy. Look at the corporate media trying to undermine the elections held in Britain and America. They're all on the same fucking team. They all want these things overthrown, and they just don't care. But there is more good news out of 2016, because the corporate media is dying, and the alternative media is rising. And this is because the mainstream media is not fit for purpose, and everybody knows it. Only 6% of people actually trust the media. And the media is getting quite pissed off that they see the people turning on them. And it's with absolutely no irony that they begin talking about fake news. The people who are famous, the ones who have pissed off so many people that 94% of people don't really think they're very trustworthy, have the gall to talk about fake news. You couldn't make it up. It's absolutely unbelievable. And as with all things, you reap what you sow. And when the mainstream media is literally saying things like, our polls give Hillary Clinton a 98.1% chance of winning the presidency, you can see who is so out of touch. Because the right wing is rising everywhere, and it's because of the fault of the left. They have dug their grave, and now they are going to be buried in it, and they can't accept it. And I have to say, for me, the highlight was certainly Donald Trump having them all in a big meeting and treating them like they were the liars that they are. Trump started with CNN chief Jeff Zucker and said, I hate your network. Everyone at CNN is a liar and you should be ashamed. That's true. The meeting was a total disaster. The TV execs and anchors went there thinking they would be discussing access that they would get to Trump, the Trump administration, but instead they got a Trump-style dressing down. Imagine being so fucking arrogant that you think you can spend a year calling a man a racist, sexist, rapist, lying Nazi, and then expect access to that guy when he beats you. Just imagine the fucking hubris of thinking, you know, I can say whatever the fuck I want about someone, and at the end of it, I can expect them to deal with me fairly and honestly. That is lunacy. That is such arrogance. I can hardly even imagine it. But this is what these people are like. And again, don't let people fool you into thinking that 2016 sucked, because Gawker felt this firing squad quite early on in the year when Hulk Hogan buried them with his $115 million sex tape case, in which they saw themselves closed and Nick Denton saw himself bankrupted. And not a single tear was shed for you, Gawker. Because if you go around lying about people, manipulating people, and being flagrant hypocrites, you reap what you sow. You get what you deserve. A recent YouGov poll showed that the second most popular event in 2016 in Britain was Brexit, coming a close second after the Olympics. And a poll in America said that 72% of Americans feel hopeful about 2017. That's nearly 3/4 of Americans who are hopeful about next year, with 61% that they are feeling optimistic about it, and 51% saying they are feeling excited. So when the mainstream media talking heads are doing nothing but telling you that 2016 was the worst year ever and that this couldn't get any worse, That's just for them. For most people, things are looking up. People are looking to the future with some positivity for the first time in years. This is amazing. 2016 was a brilliant year for anyone against the retrograde forces of the regressive left. And that makes the ending song of this year in Stupid all the funnier.
2016, it's been a time, it's been a struggle, but everything is fine if you're a straight white male muggle. We've tried to stay composed, cross our fingers, count to 10. But every time we get to 9, you fuck it up again. You took David Bowie, Alan Rickman, Prince and Sharon Jones, Terry Wogan, Ronnie Corbett, Caroline Aherne and Leonard Cohen. Victoria Wood was enough for us, but still you wanted more. Muhammad Ali, Gene Wilder and the Great British Baker was the final straw. You shot down a gorilla, we can't cure the Zika virus, and the woman's still to blame when men force their way inside us. Rod Turner's not a rapist, cause just look how fast he swims. Can someone get me Ambien into calm my shaking quim? Should we just try to unplug you and then plug you back in? Did your parents get divorced or did you just drink too much gin? God damn it, 2016, and on top of all of that, Cats is back on Broadway. Who the fuck did that? They throw in all the shootings both en masse and by police, a spike in racist hate crimes and a bombing down in Nice. The death toll is upsetting and your politics are farce. Thank you 2016, you fucked us up the arse. Cause all over the world it's not looking good for you if you're female, Muslim, POC or LGBTQ. And God fucking forbid we'd let Hillary be in charge. Instead we get the spunk trumpets and fuckboys in this farce. Yes, you really took a dump when you let Twat Nugget Farage lead a racist referendum who put that shitty frog in charge. Your Brexit was a dum-dum, now our country lives in fear. You really are the skid mark of all the shit he is. Yes, the USA's now governed by a fuck Cheeto with hair, and it's not just in the States, the fucking clowns are everywhere. Fon, fon, fon. 3 cheers for fucking Trumpy and his neo-Nazi crew. What a bloody nasty, messy, booby fuck to do. We're sorry for the swearing, and we're sorry to be crude. But we're really cunting angry and it's all because of you. You laid an egg of solid talk, you taste like made of weed. You garbage bag of bomb dust, you're shitty 2016. La 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 la.
You're fucking a white male!